What is going on, Cowboys Nation? And let me tell you right now, you need to stop what you are doing because we have got a situation developing here in Frisco, Texas, that is either going to make you furious or make you scratch your head in absolute confusion. I am talking about George Pickens, and I am talking about a report that just dropped that has the entire fan base in an uproar. If you are not subscribed to this channel, you are missing the most accurate and in-depth Cowboys coverage anywhere on this platform, so smash that subscribe button right now and turn on those notifications because when news breaks, I am the one breaking it first. You have seen it time and time again, and today is no exception. We are going deep on this one, so buckle up and let us get into it. Now, before we dive into the chaos, I need to remind you of something very important. Way back on November 27th, I was the first to report via a source with a direct quote that the Dallas Cowboys plan to place the franchise tag on George Pickens. The quote was clear. They are using it at least as an easy path placeholder on the way to a possible long-term contract. That was the plan then, and as far as the people I talked to inside that building are concerned, that is still the plan now. But here comes the wrinkle, and I will be honest with you, this one is troubling in ways that I need to explain as we go through my 3 takes on this subject. This comes from a respected colleague and friend of the show, Ian Rappaport, who said on Super Bowl Sunday, and I quote, regarding Pickens, a tag and trade scenario is considered to be a possibility for Dallas. Now let that sink in for a moment, tag and trade. And then he goes on to suggest that maybe the Cowboys would be satisfied with accepting in that trade a second-round pick. A second-round pick for George Pickens for a guy who just put up 93 catches for 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. For a Pro Bowler, for an All-Pro, a second-round pick. And one more thing from Ian, he suggests that trading superstars for picks is a commonplace habit for Jerry Jones and his Cowboys organization. We are going to address every single one of these points because there is a lot to unpack here, and I want to make sure you understand exactly what is happening behind the scenes. Let me give you the lay of the land on item number 1. George Pickens in the coming days is going to become an unrestricted free agent after finishing his first year with the Cowboys in spectacular fashion. We already talked about the numbers, but let me put this in perspective for you. This is not just production. This is elite production. This is the kind of season that transforms a receiver's market value overnight. And I can tell you, having talked to people in that locker room and having talked to people on the coaching staff and having talked to people in the scouting department right here in Frisco, they believe this notion of trading him for a second rounder is absolutely idiotic. That is not my word. That is the sentiment coming from inside that building. You want to know what Dak Prescott thinks about this situation? Let me give you the quote directly. He said, "George is a game changer. This is a must sign. We have to do whatever we have to do." That is your franchise quarterback telling you exactly how valuable this player is to the operation. And he is right. When you find a receiver who can take the top off a defense, who can win contested catches, who can stretch the field and create opportunities for everyone else around him, you do not let that guy walk out the door for a compensatory pick 2 years from now, and you certainly do not trade him for the 60th best player in college football. Now, let me clear something up because I have seen some reports floating around suggesting that Pickens got tagged today. That is not correct, and it cannot be done yet. These rules are tricky, and I understand why people get confused, but the franchise tag window does not open until March 3rd. So any report telling you he has already been tagged is simply wrong. On March 3rd, the Cowboys can officially place that tag on him, which would guarantee him $28 million for the 2026 season as a one-year deal. From that point, the two sides would have until July 15th to continue negotiating toward a long-term contract. If nothing gets done by July 15th, then he is locked into that one-year tag number. But here is the key point. The ultimate plan has always been to use that tag as a bridge toward a long-term deal. That is indisputable based on everything I have been told. Item number 2, and this is where I really start scratching my head. I cannot for the life of me explain what would motivate a source inside that building to tell Ian Rappaport that they would be willing to accept a second-round pick for George Pickens. If I was running a football team and I had even the slightest inclination to move on from a player of this caliber, I would not leak that I am willing to accept a second-round pick. That is negotiating against yourself before negotiations even begin. If I was going to leak anything, I would leak that I am open to discussing incredible offers. I would be vague about it. I would say something like, we are willing to listen to substantial packages from teams that want to make a serious play for George. That creates a bidding war. That drives up the price. Saying you will take a second rounder does the opposite. Now, there is another possibility here, and I think it is worth considering. Maybe this information did not come from inside the Cowboys building at all. Maybe NFL.com got this from other teams or from the agent himself. Think about it. David Mulugheta represents George Pickens, and agents are not exactly known for sitting quietly during contract negotiations. Mulugheta and his client did this exact thing last summer with Micah Parsons. They stirred the pot with information and misinformation. They manipulated the narrative until Micah was walking down the tunnel eating nachos during games and eventually maneuvered his way out of Dallas entirely. I never thought Micah Parsons was going to be anything other than a Cowboy for life, and then suddenly he was gone. So do not underestimate the power of agent-driven narratives. I also want to address something I keep seeing in the comments and hearing from fans who do not quite understand how the salary cap works around here. Someone asked me if Dak and CD agreed to restructure their deals to help get Pickens signed. No, that is not how this works, and it is not even close to how this works. CD Lamb apparently does not understand it, either because he had an on-air conversation with Dan Patrick about how he is willing to give up money to bring in George. That makes for a nice headline, but it reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how Cowboys contracts are structured. The Cowboys helped invent this concept, and now many teams around the league do it. There is a function built into the big money contracts here where if the team needs cap room, they flip a switch and they get that room. It is essentially bookkeeping. In some cases, it extends years, but in many cases, it just moves money into an existing void year. No player approval is required. The Cowboys do not even have to call Dak or CD to do this. They just do it. And in the case of those two players alone, just those two restructures would create $50 million in cap space. That is before touching anyone else on the roster. So when we talk about the Cowboys' ability to get $100 million in cap room, that is not an exaggeration. It is math. Here is the thing that really bothers me about this whole situation. If someone inside the building is concerned about paying Pickens $28 million on the tag, then the solution is simple. Do a long-term deal so the cap impact is not $28 million. When you sign a player to a multi-year extension, you can structure it so the first-year cap hit is significantly lower. We are talking about a 2026 cap impact of maybe $10 to $12 million on a long-term deal. You barely have to do anything to create that kind of room. And here is the other thing. Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones are the ones who keep saying publicly that Pickens is as good as CD Lamb. Well, guess what? You just paid CD Lamb $34 million per year. So why would Pickens' agent not come back and say, well, I guess my guy is worth $34 million too? And maybe he is. Maybe that is exactly what he is worth in this market. There is one more possibility I want to throw out there. It is Super Bowl week. Jerry Jones cannot stand being out of the spotlight during Super Bowl week. He wants the Cowboys to be above the fold. He wants people talking about Dallas even when Dallas is not playing in the game. So maybe Jerry leaked this himself just to get the Cowboys in the news. We have seen him do this before. Create controversy, generate headlines, stay relevant. I think we all agree that if that is what happened, then God Almighty, we hate it. But it would not be out of character. At the same time that this leak happened, I have Jerry Jones on multiple occasions saying publicly that he is committed to George. Quote, I am looking forward to getting things worked out so George can be a Cowboy for a long time. So which is it, Jerry? Are you committed to the guy or are you shopping him for a second rounder? You cannot have it both ways. Item number 3. And this is important. Ian Rappaport does not make very many mistakes. He is really good at his job, and I respect him. He is not like some of the other reporters out there who are just reading texts from agents on air or copying and pasting information into tweets without verifying anything. But on this particular assertion, Ian missed the mark. He suggested that Dallas does this all the time, that they frequently trade superstars for premium picks, and that is flat wrong. Jerry Jones has been running this franchise for 37 years. In that time, he has made this type of blockbuster superstar for picks trade exactly twice. The first was the Herschel Walker trade, which ended up being the heist of the century and set up the dynasty of the 1990s. The second was Micah Parsons, which happened just recently under unique circumstances. If you can name a third one, please bring it, because I have been covering this team for the entirety of that time, and I am not aware of another example. The Cowboys simply do not make blockbuster trades giving away superstars for picks all the time. It is the exception, not the rule. Let me also point out how absurd the second-round pick valuation is. You mentioned the Bills would love to have George Pickens. Where are the Bills picking in the second round? Somewhere around pick 60. You want to trade George Pickens for the 60th best player in college football? No, you do not. That is not even close to fair value for a player of his caliber. Now, I will say this. Should the Cowboys have a nuclear option in their back pocket? Of course they should. What if everything goes completely sideways like it did with Micah Parsons? What if the agent convinces his client to pout and sit out and eat nachos during games? Because that is exactly what happened last year. You want to be aware of the tag and trade possibility, but you do not leak that you are willing to accept pennies on the dollar. This is a never say never business, and I learned that the hard way with Micah Parsons. His departure was never going to happen until it did. But even in a worst-case scenario where Pickens becomes a problem, a second-round pick is nowhere near good enough compensation. At the very least, whoever is concocting this plan and saying it out loud for the world to hear better not be in charge of anything important at Cowboys headquarters. The bottom line is this: George Pickens will be here next year. If you are a betting person, that is the smart bet. The Cowboys are going to tag him on March 3rd, and they are going to work toward a long-term deal between then and July 15th. That has been the plan since November, and that remains the plan today. Do not let the noise distract you from the reality of the situation. Before I let you go, I want to remind you about our jersey giveaway. We are doing Troy Aikman versus Des Bryant. Go to cowboysroundtable.com, hit that join button, and tell us which jersey you want to win. 3 Super Bowls with class for Troy, 3 All-Pro selections for Des, both legendary Cowboys, and you could be wearing one of their jerseys. Also, do not forget to check out the Uncle Fish store. Broken Halo does tremendous work over there. You can get the straight dope, no BS cap, and the fish out mug, along with all kinds of other gear. Link is in the description below. That is going to do it for today, Cowboys Nation. Make sure you subscribe if you have not already, and I will catch you on the next one. Fish out.